Hey everybody, welcome back to James Draws Everything. Happy Columbus Day, and in honor of Christopher Columbus today in our Drawing Every Country in the World's Flag series, we're going to be doing Spain. And check out my other video. I did upload a video today about Christopher Columbus, and of course Columbus, not Spanish, but he did make his voyage at the behest of the Spanish Empire during the Age of Exploration. And Spain does have a pretty cool flag, I must say. And it's pretty complicated too. So, not going to get any bonus content today, just because it's got a pretty intricate design. But you can always go, like I said, check out my my Christopher Columbus video. You can treat that as some Spain bonus content. And Spain does have a tricolored flag, and that does go back to the 18th century. So if you want to know why there's so many tricolored flags in the world, you can go watch my video on France, where I do explain that. But there's a little more to the Spanish flag than just the tricolored design. It does have a pretty cool coat of arms in the center on the hoist side, so we'll get to that in a minute. And yeah, this one might take me a little bit here, so plenty of time to talk about Spain. And Spain is one of my favorite countries to study. I think the Reconquista period and the Spanish Civil War are very, very interesting to talk about. And we'll be talking about both of them. So, ancient Spain, a lot of Celtic people there, Vandals, a lot of people that are kind of just erased by history. Spain does get taken over by the Muslim world for a few hundred years. And then when the Muslims are kicked out, as well as the Jewish people, by Catholic Spain, that kicks off the Spanish Golden Age, right? 1492, Christopher Columbus sails the ocean blue. So Spain expands into the New World. This is pretty much the height of the Spanish Empire, right? So, and the Inquisitions and stuff that happened, there's a lot of kind of like anti-Catholic, anti-clerical revisionism in history, just all over the place. But just to kind of put things into perspective, over about 300 years, it took about 300 years for Spain to take your country back. There was about 6,000 people killed as a result of the Inquisition, right? So that's actually, over 300 years, 6,000. That's not a lot. That's like less than two people, or less than about 2% of the total amount of people that were tried, right? So a lot of them were tried, and if they converted to Christianity, they survived. That's just kind of how things were back then, right? Because if when you vanquish an enemy, you can't leave their ideology there. It's kind of politics 101. But just to put things into perspective, right? So historians, modern historians, they'll tell you that the Inquisition was just some abject, like, inhumane horror. But they won't talk about the Civil War in the 20th century. So jumping ahead just a little bit here, the Spanish Civil War, in the first 6 months of the Civil War, the left killed about 10,000 clergymen. That's not combat deaths. That's just like clerical people, priests, nuns. So 10,000 in 6 months versus about 6,000 over 300 years. And they don't talk about that as like it's like some sort of abject horror. But we'll get to the Civil War in a minute. Might have to I have to mix my colors here a little bit. I'm not really finding a yellow that I really like. But yeah, so Spain. Actually, let me do this little design in here first. And my God, this is gonna be a tough one, but we'll manage. So Spain, height of the world. They are not just like a Catholic country. They are pretty much the Catholic country in the world. And then a series of events leads to a war with Britain, and a lot of our history, is kind of filtered through a British lens, right? That's our history, our DNA. Britain was not always like the strongest power in the world or anything like that. They were kind of seen as like a backwards place, right? Like when the Romans arrived there centuries earlier, they were astounded at like how barbaric these people seemed to them. But Britain, because it's an island, has to have a strong navy, right? So almost every conflict in British history, it's navy, 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 right? They really, really take pride in their navy, because that's how they survive. They have to have it there, just being an isolated island like that. Now, the British actually defeat the Spanish in a war, kind of due to having that navy, and so that kind of kicks off the decline of the Spanish Empire. Also, keeping the empire, like in Latin America, was a lot more costly than it was kind of worth. They don't really tell you that. They just say, oh, they were just greedy and hoarding all the gold and everything. But no, they actually couldn't really administrate it very well. So Britain kind of, leading into like the dawn of like the Revolutionary War in America and whatnot, Britain and France kind of take over that part of the world, the Americas. Spain still has a presence, but they're not like, like the number one power anymore. Okay, so yeah, and then Spain goes to war with America, and that's pretty much the end right there. There's no Spanish Empire after that. So Spain is defeated. They lose a lot of their overseas possessions. And in the 20th century, this is where things get interesting. Spain is not involved in either World War I or World War II. Kind of. The Spanish Civil War that happens in the 1930s really needs to be kind of studied more, I think. There's still stuff that's being translated into English, like to this very day. So we're getting a lot more information about it. But I kind of call that like, it's almost like a reverse, like Cold War, right, between the fascists and the communists. Right, there was an attempted communist takeover of Spain, and the commies actually got whooped. So it's one of the few instances in the 20th century where they put a stop to it, right? And that's a very, very complex issue on the Spanish Civil War. There's a lot of different parties involved in that too, so you can't really just talk about it as like just the fascists versus the communists. One thing you can say though about the right, right? So yeah, there's a right versus left war. One thing you can say about the right though is that they did have, they were more organized, and that's why they won. All right, so on the right you had a mixture of fascists. You had military guys. You had old monarchists like the Phalange and the Carlists, right? So you had a mixture of people that wanted to keep the monarchy versus those that maybe didn't want the monarchy. They wanted a republic, but they were still sympathetic to traditions and whatnot. So that's kind of politics 101, right? I mean, we can agree and disagree on little things, but as long as we have the big things, we can work together. You didn't really have that on the left in the Spanish Civil War. So remember, this is a period too where Bolshevism just basically destroyed Russia, right? So they just had the Communist Revolution in 1917, and there was a lot of fear of what would happen if that spread to other European nations, right? So you see a lot of anarchy movements. You see the rise of fascism, which is national, whereas communism was global. Right? Communism was always supposed to take over the entire world. But yeah, you also see so the anarchists, you have a lot of left-leaning anarchists. And then you have hardcore communists. This wasn't even really known until fairly recently. Give them credit. Russia, they've been declassifying a lot of those old Soviet-era documents. So we're finding out a lot of stuff that we didn't really know before. And Stalin was 100% behind the Spanish Civil War. Right? He backed the left. He backed having a communist takeover of Spain, right? And that they put a stop to that, thankfully. And the guy who took power after the Civil War, Franco, they'll tell you he was a dictator and all that, but I think that's kind of nonsense. Franco kept communism out of Spain for almost 50 years, half a century. So I think he deserves to be applauded for that. And they'll tell you he abused people, he took their rights away, and well, yeah, he did that to communists that were planning to overthrow his government. Right? You hear the same stuff with where they say about Pinochet and whatnot. And the thing about Franco too is this is so alien to modern ears, but back in those days, if you were a military man, you really didn't play politics very much. It was kind of seen as beneath you. So you just served whoever the head of the state was. So Franco was really no different. But then when he saw the absolute chaos that was taking place with an attempted communist takeover, he stepped up and got rid of him. And he did have some backing from Nazi Germany at that time, but that's another kind of complicated issue. I think Hitler kind of viewed Franco as a turncoat because Spain remained out of World War II, but he was probably expecting something in return. But yeah, if you're a Spanish leader, right, your loyalty is to Spain, not really to Germany or anywhere else, right? So you had a very strong coalition on the right, whereas the left did a lot of infighting, right? So I mentioned earlier revolutionary ideas like communism, anarchy, spreading throughout Europe. So a lot of anarchists, they didn't like the existing Spanish government because anarchists are always going to be, anti-monarchy. But the anarchists thought they could coexist with the communists, right? And there's no stronger form of government than communism, right? That is where the state is involved in literally every aspect of your life. So the fact that these left-leaning anarchists thought they could get along with them was just insane. And they were among the first to be killed. The commies just basically killed off all the anarchists. So yeah, good on you, anarchists. But yeah, so a lot of the left-leaning factions, they started eating each other. The left always eats its own. And the right, while they had their differences, they could put aside those differences for the good of the Spanish Republic and to keep communists out of Spain. So Franco dies. Jumping ahead here quite a bit, but I could talk for days and days about the Spanish Civil War. A really good book. A guy named Anthony Beevor was a British historian. Probably wrote the best history of the Spanish Civil War in English. Right? I'm sure we're probably still finding a lot of stuff in Spanish or stuff that hasn't been translated yet, which I'd love to get my hands on when the time comes. But yeah, so Franco dies 1975. Spain starts liberating a little bit, you know, and now they're just like any other old, you know, European country, international community, right? Can't have that. So yeah, I mean their glory days are, you know, kind of definitely behind them, like as far as you know, empire and being a major world power. They still have a seat at the table, right? In the EU, United Nations, you know, they're an important voice, you know, one of the stronger countries in the world. But you know, as far as Europe goes, I think they're like the fourth biggest economy in Europe. So yeah, a lot of interesting history though. Like again, Spanish Civil War, as well as Reconquista and Age of Exploration. Like those are all, you know, really interesting things to study. Big fan of Spain and its history. What about the flag, James? All right, yeah, I can keep talking and talking. So it's got 4 emblems inside this coat of arms, and the emblems represent Castile, Leon, Navarre, and Aragon. All right, and now Spain too. While I'm talking about that, you know, in the Civil War, there were a lot of separatists in like the Catalonia and Basque regions, which they're still separatists today. So the separatists actually, you know, they didn't want to be part of like the Kingdom of Spain. So they, you know, joined the left and really couldn't get along with the communists either. So that was a house of cards that just kind of collapsed. But yeah, and it's got a little pomegranate in the bottom, which I don't even know if you're going to be able to see this, but the pomegranate at the bottom of that coat of arms represents Granada. All right. And then these 2 things here are the Pillars of Hercules based. That's pretty awesome. So the Pillars of Hercules represent Gibraltar and Ceuta, the straits that go through them. And then the colors these are old colors of Spain, the red and the dark yellow. And it's got an insignia. I obviously didn't write this small, but like wrapped around those pillars there, plus ultra, meaning further beyond Europe, out into the new world. You know, that's Spain, the spirit of exploration, and all that. So that's pretty cool. Like the flag, I like it a lot. Very detailed, but we got it done, right? Let me just see if there's anything else I can do in here. I just want to make this a little more green in the center. And let's see, maybe just take my very thin marker here and just kind of accentuate those badass Pillars of Hercules a little bit more. Okay, might as well call it a day. I think if I do too much more, I'm probably gonna mess something up. So that's Spain. All right, so happy Columbus Day. Check out my Christopher Columbus video, and here's Spain. And don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.